Welcome, everyone, and thank you for listening to the Hire Calling podcast. I'm Pete Newsom, and this is your source for all things hiring, staffing, and recruiting. It's a beautiful Monday here in Florida. Ricky, how are you today?
I'm enjoying this beautiful Florida fall weather, Pete. I really am.
It feels almost like it's about to get cool, almost, not quite.
Yeah, but it gets me excited because I can see what's coming. I can see that the temperatures are going to keep dropping and dropping because, I mean, look, it's people who don't know in Central Florida from, I don't know, May until August. You walk out that door, that thing called humidity gives you a big bear hug and it makes you feel like you're still in the shower. And that's starting to go away for like 2 months, and I'm happy.
It's 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 close. You feel it, but as long as it's gone by Halloween, that's my
Yeah.
yeah. As a native Floridian, that's my ask always is just be gone so we can enjoy Halloween and the kids can wear costumes and not be dripping in sweat like you said before they get to the edge of the driveway. But
It's the worst.
and it's like 50-50. I think some years we're great, others not so much. So we'll see. It's close. It's
Yeah,
coming.
we're getting there. We're getting there.
It's coming. All right, man. So today we're going to do another Q&A. Are you ready for that?
I love these. I love these because this is I love what people are thinking about it out there. And you know what, folks? And for those of you listening, please don't wait for this section to come up in the podcast menu. It's any questions you have. Continue to send them in. Hire calling at fourcornerresources.com. Continue sending those in. We love when these questions come in so we can talk about it on the air.
And it makes it really easy to prepare
That's
because
right.
we don't have to do anything but show up and
That's
and
right.
uh, and make it up as we go.
Efficiency.
That's right. So look, I actually picked out three questions
Okay.
for today that are really geared towards helping out hiring managers. We spend a lot of time on our content, what we produce and publish on fourcornerresources.com, our blog articles, our LinkedIn information, and even most of our podcasts tend to lean towards candidates more than anything else because candidates come to us with so many questions. But we also are in a unique position to help out HR managers, hiring managers, and even other recruiters. So come to us with your questions, as well, please, because we want to be really forthcoming and open with our information, and we certainly appreciate the opportunity to share with a different audience than what we're typically spending most of our time with internally at Four Corner. So on Hire Calling, we really want to be broad in the information we share. And today we're going to focus on some questions from hiring managers that are timely. In this world right now, there's been a lot of shifts. There's more shifts coming, probably. I don't even know that we can predict what and when those will exactly be, but it's things are changing pretty quickly. Wouldn't you agree?
They are. It's kind of scary though, but it's been scary for the past 18 months, right? Because 2 years ago, we would never think we would be in a situation where we are right now, not knowing where all this is going. So it's both scary and, dare I say it, exciting at the same time. Really is.
Potentially,
Yeah.
potentially
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's a different kind of scary, right? First, there was survival, scary. What's going to happen? Fear of the unknown, and now it's okay. We know that things are different, but we don't have a roadmap on how to proceed. And we're things are being reinvented. What's normal is being reinvented, and companies are making things up as they go, trying to adapt and persist, as our employees, as is everyone right now. And it can be exciting for sure, but it's in the moment. I think it can also feel very uncertain as you try
Yeah.
to decide what's best, whether you're an individual looking for a job or a large corporation trying to make decisions that could affect thousands of employees. I mean, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it is. And it's I can't wait for the point, Pete, that we're 5 years from now we're looking back and we're enjoying some of the new policies, we're enjoying some of the new ways of working because it all came out of necessity with this pandemic, right? Whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, to me, that's the part that's really exciting, just to see where we're going to be in 5 years. Hopefully, in a better place, right? Not in a worse place, but if we're in a better place, just looking back 5 years and saying, "You remember when we used to do things this way and that way?" That's the old conversation, the old grandpa, grandma talking about they never had the internet or TV. This is it.
Walking
This is that
is this,
shift.
we can talk about how we used to walk uphill both ways,
Yeah.
back and forth to school.
Well, yeah, our way to do it is, back when I used to hoverboard to school both ways. So we'll see. I never did that, but whatever.
So these questions, I think, are timely in this,
Yeah.
and have to do with the changing world that we're in. So let's get right to it, and I'll ask you the first one, and that is from a manager that wants to know how to spot employee burnout before it's too late, before it becomes an issue. What's your thought on that?
So it's how can we spot employee burnout before it becomes a burnout? So that's key. That's key, because by the time you spot the burnout, I think it's too late, right? I mean, there's still some time to salvage, but I think it's too late. Just off the top of my head, Pete, the best way, and you might get tired, and just tell me, Ricky, I'm tired of you saying that, but I'm just going to say it anyway, Pete. Building relationships. If you, as a manager, meet with your employees regularly, you have some kind of vested interest in their personal lives, and you build a specific rapport with them, you should be able to pick up on these things before it becomes an issue, right? It one example would be, you know what, myself, as an example, because I love barbecuing. And on the weekends, I love to barbecue on Saturday. I love to smoke a nice brisket for 12 hours that the neighbors love on Sunday. And, if my boss and I had a rapport, and and if she would ask me, "What are you doing this weekend?" I'm like, nothing. I'm just going to work. Okay. Following weekend, nothing. I'm just going to work. Following weekend, nothing. I'm just going to work. But she knows, like, so when are you going to do a brisket? Bing, that's a red light, right? Let's have a conversation, find out what's going on. So it's all about having that relationship. So now I will caution people. I really will caution people, because I know I keep saying, folks, build a relationship with your people. Be careful how far you take it, managers, right? Because you could have some employees who they don't want a personal relationship with you, right? They just want to come in, do their job, and go home. Here's what I say to those managers who have an employee like that: leave them alone. Leave them alone. Don't keep trying to build that relationship with those folks if they don't want one, because now you're going to go from trying to spot employee burnout into being dead smack in the middle of an employee relations investigation about harassment. You don't want that.
Okay, no, we definitely don't want that.
You don't want that, right?
So a couple thoughts on that, and maybe a question or two as well.
Yeah.
You know, I think we have to, what you're saying is see everyone as an individual and treat them accordingly, and get to know them individually, and understand what their tendencies might be, to know if something changes. Um, here's a question. As the owner of a business, 16 years now, when there's been times where employees have resigned, and I did not see it coming. And that's frustrating for me, very frustrating, because I can't fix a problem I'm unaware of. And if it's an internal thing, like burnout, where I don't see it in the work performance. I don't see it in their habits or behavior, because it's something that's internal. And I've been told, as I've expressed that frustration, probably even to you, that well, Pete, you're the boss, right? You're no one's comfortable, going to be comfortable telling you, or you should expect to be the last to know in a situation like that. But I don't want to be the last to know. I would like to be one of the first to know, so I can fix whatever is broken if possible. I can improve the situation. But I can't do any of those things unless I'm aware. So what advice would you have for someone like me. And quite frankly, one of the reasons you're at Four Corner is because I saw that as an area of our business that we needed to be really good with. That we weren't as good as we needed to be with our internal employees, of making sure that our culture is the best that it can be. So in that situation, putting you on the spot here, what advice do you have to not be the last to know?
So here's the thing. It's your situation is different, Pete, right? Because you're the president, CEO of an organization, right? So for you to spend all that time and effort into getting to know each and every one of every employee, you will never have time to run your business if that's all you did. You won't, right? So what I'm saying is for the one over of the person, right? So for that one over manager that really spends their time with that individual. Now, for somebody in your position, the best thing you can do is to empower all of your lieutenants, all of your captains, everybody who report to you, that have a lot of the people who report to them, is to give them the flexibility to do what is needed, and to give them marching orders and say, hey, I need you to check up on these guys every week. Try to build relationships, but be genuine about it. So, and then if there's an issue, they need to bubble that up to you. That way, you're not the last to know. So, if every lieutenant, and I keep using that term loosely, every lieutenant, every captain that you have, if they do that, right, whenever an issue comes up, it'll funnel back up to you, right? That, because again, you don't have time to do that. You've got to run a huge business. So the best thing you can do as a CEO, as that business owner, is to take the handcuffs off, not to say that they're on, or even give them some marching orders to say, here's what you need to do to build rapport with your team. Give them that flexibility, give them those just give them that flexibility to do so,
So I
and
think
funnel any issues to you.
I think that's great advice, and it really, what you're saying is it's a matter of practicality,
Yeah,
right? So, but, you're not less interested by not being firsthand involved. You're actually proving that you are interested by making sure that the right people in the right place can get the information.
that's
So
right.
I'll take it as a good sign then, as since you are one of my direct reports, you'd report directly to me that you sent me a picture of whatever you were barbecuing on Friday night. So
That's right.
to
Yeah,
bring it back to that.
yeah, Friday night, I'm like, I went over to the to this meat market that I just discovered 2 weeks ago. Went in there, got some nice Brazilian steaks, throw them on the grill, and I'm like, Pete should know about this. Send
There
you
you
a
go.
picture.
Well, that was good.
Yeah.
I'm still going to need lessons at some point soon,
Oh, we'll
but
get there. We'll get there. We'll do
uh,
a barbecue podcast. We'll do
there,
it.
there, there you go. Fourth of July edition. With burnout, it's a word that I hear more frequently now, and I'll say this to say that I'm surprised. We got through COVID.
Mhm.
People were, furloughs were happening, layoffs were happening, permanent, job loss, and companies like ours, we're fortunate to survive and even come out on the other side of COVID with growth opportunities. And I would think, perhaps incorrectly, it seems that people would be ecstatic to be in a position of employment right now, of opportunity. And I am hearing that the word burnout more now than I ever did previously in my career, which seems sort of counterintuitive to me, where now should be, we should be ecstatic, but the opposite is true. Do you have any opinion on why? I've read a bit about it, and I think I've started forming an opinion because I did some research because it was sort of perplexing to me at first. But what's your thought on that?
I can answer that by asking you this question. So, Pete, do you know the difference between a boomer and a millennial?
Other than age and experience?
So, well, I'll tell you. God, I said that up wrong. So here's the difference between a boomer and a millennial. So a boomer.
I'm neither, by the way. I'm not a
Well,
boomer.
yeah, me neither.
Despite my kids, having enjoying calling me that, I'm not a boomer. But go on.
I got you. So, when a boomer, when they grew up in their career in an environment where it was very top-down leadership, right? So that boomer, when earlier on in their career, when they asked for a day off, that's what they did. They ask. and they will ask their boss, "Hey, boss, can I get Friday off? Yes, no, okay. If it's no, it's okay, no problem." They walk away. A millennial doesn't ask. A millennial tells the boss they're taking Friday off and who's going to cover their stuff, right?
Right.
So when you have a baby boomer, because when that baby boomer grew up in their career, that is how they saw how employees and managers should relate to each other, right? They ask. So now that baby boomer is in charge of an organization, and all these millennials are just telling the boss that what days they're taking off, and it's driving this person crazy, right? Two completely different points of view as far as work ethic is concerned. Now, let me bring it back to burnout. What I'm seeing here with burnout, because I'm with you on this, Pete. The burnout I'm seeing today, what people say, is different than what I had growing up in my career. But then I go back to that example. It's not that it's right wrong. It's that it's just different. They have nothing to compare it to, right? Of course, I'm talking to younger people, the younger workforce, especially the workforce who came into the workforce during COVID. They think this is normal. And it's not. Whereas you and I have something, a different time, a different work ethic to compare it to. So to me, when somebody says, "I'm burnt out," and I'm like, in the back of my head, that's not burnout. I know burnout.
Right. I mean, burnout to me is you've been working 70-hour days consecutively for 4 months and you need a break. Not you've been working at home for maybe 40,
Right.
like
Yeah. It's
it's
different.
it is vastly different. And I don't know what to attribute it to. Because if that burns you out, what's not going to burn you out?
Honestly, I think, and God, I'm speaking out of term here, but I'm going to say it anyway, Pete. I really think the best way to help somebody with burnout when they just started out in their career is there's nothing much more you can do other than advise that person and let time let them know that wasn't burnout. Just how us, for you and me, back then when we thought we were being burnt out, now we're looking back and that's normal for us. We're like, that wasn't burnout, right? That's something very different. So I think time, we need to give them time. If they don't want to be here because they feel burnt out, right? Obviously, let's try to help them as much as we can, but why are we here though? We're here to run a business and we're here to make money, right? We got to make sure that whatever we do for somebody that says I'm being burnt out and we disagree with it, that yeah, let's help them out a little bit, but not to the point that we start losing money and we start getting away from the reason we're in the business to begin with. So sometimes is maybe you do have to go somewhere else and see what the other side has to offer. And if you've been performing with us, and we'll welcome you back with open arms if you left in good terms.
Yeah, and I think that there's going to be a cycle it with uh I would say the younger professional generation is going to have to experience that,
Yeah.
right? Because there's so many jobs open right now. It's very easy to move from one to the other. And
Yeah.
companies, we know this to be definitively true, that companies are jumping through hoops right now to attract talent, offering what I consider to be unnatural things. Maybe I am a boomer. I don't know. I'm not age wise, but my thinking is at times where things like unlimited vacation days. Now, as an employee, that sounds amazing. As a business owner, I struggle with that. As a staffing professional, I struggle with that. Now, admittedly, we have internally at Four Corner now offer up to unlimited, you can earn potentially unlimited vacation days, right? And that was a plan that I signed off on, one that I scratched my head over a little bit, right? Because if it starts to get abused at some point, it could be detrimental to the organization as a whole. And you shouldn't ever have a compensation plan or benefits plan that would lead to the company's demise,
Yeah,
right?
true.
But when I see companies from day one, you can have unlimited benefits or unlimited vacation days. I think some smart ass is going to take advantage of that at some point and just say, today is my first day and my first day of vacation. I will see you at some point in the future, right? And so I think there's probably a lot of fine print in all of these deals is the truth. We don't try to pretend ours is different than it is. It has to be earned, and you
Hmm.
have to maintain a certain level of performance in order to keep it. And to your point earlier about approval, yes, we still have to approve the days in advance,
Yes.
because we do have a business to run.
That's right.
But when I see these things, I think, wow, employers are really bending over backwards right now to accommodate employees, and that is not a bad thing. But there's a point where work still has to be done.
Yep.
There's a point where it's still a business, as you said earlier, and I think this cycle has to play out to some degree
Yep.
where, to answer the question of how do you spot it, you can spot it, but you may not be able to do anything about it, right? You can only let an employee have so much, flexibility in their hours. If there's a job that needs to be done, they have to work enough to do it. And so I think that's very an individual thing. But I would answer, the person that asked to say, identifying it's one thing, preventing it is another, but stopping it altogether from happening is a tough
It's very
challenge.
difficult. And Pete, here's the thing, and it's I think if the leader would start building relationships just for no other reason other than building a relationship with their employees, I think if you will, you're not going to be able to stop it. You're going to be able to prevent some things if you do little tweaks here, little tweaks there. Going back to my example of barbecuing, right? If my boss came to me in a hypothetical world that, hey, you haven't, it's been 3 weeks and you haven't done that, what can I do to help you? Right? Because now we got to have the conversation as a leader. Why am I spending so much time on the weekends working? Right? So is it because we do have that much work, or am I not managing my time right? Right? So if that leader was to take a deeper dive into that conversation, they would know exactly what's driving that. So you never know where that conversation may go later on, but someone has to ask. Someone has to ask because the employee, a good employee, it's not going to want to complain. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. They're not going to want to complain. They're not want to be seen as a complainer. So sometimes us as a leader have to step in and say, "Whoa, what's going on? You know what? Back that off." You've done that before, right? Because when one of the directors went on vacation not too long ago, went. What do you tell them? Don't open your laptop. Don't take your
Right.
laptop. Don't do any of that, right? Because you cared about that person's time off, right? That's what people need to be doing. It's just catching it right then and there because you've got a relationship with him. So you know what works for him, what doesn't work for him, and just being there and saying, don't do that, leave that at home, enjoy your trip. That's what people got to do.
And I think your primary advice is on point and beneficial. You build relationships, ask the questions, and I would just add to any employees who are listening, answer the questions.
Yes. Yes.
Honestly, openly,
Yes.
because someone can't fix a problem they don't know exists,
Yep.
and to complain in silence, it does no good. And I can look back over our 16 years to some of the employees we've lost, who I think probably sought greener pastures they didn't necessarily find, but didn't have to leave to find what they were looking for. If they just been more open and honest in the conversation. So as a leader, I will tell you, I always welcome that and crave it, and it doesn't happen often enough. So maybe one of the changes that can come through this new world that we're in, so to speak, is just more open communication all around on both sides.
That's what's necessary. Just open and honest communication, especially somebody's asking you.
It's
Somebody
hard, right?
asking you
People,
to,
it's
yeah,
hard. I mean,
yeah.
it's people are hesitant to be open, right? That's a sign of vulnerability. You feel vulnerable, and maybe that's a feeling of weakness. But yeah, that I think we need more of that. I'll
Yes,
just
we do.
leave it there. We need more of
I
that.
think we answered that. We're good there. We're good.
All right, next question. Boy,
All right.
these are all
Boy, we're getting there, huh? All
yeah.
right.
Okay. How can we ensure? I love the word ensure, by the way, in this, because I'm just going to tell you can't. No matter what comes next, you can't.
Yeah.
How can we ensure the candidate shows up to a new employee orientation without ghosting us? Right.
Oh,
So Yeah, welcome to and this isn't new, right? The ghosting. I'll let you answer, then I'll share my
Well,
thoughts on
I'll
on
say
that.
this. It's last time I was a recruiter, bona fide recruiter, was 15 years ago, and let me tell you, one of if somebody would ghost me, because I just learned that not too long ago, I didn't know what that meant. When somebody would ghost me for an interview, I'm like, I can't believe it. When somebody would ghost me for any other thing, I'm like, okay, fine. But new employee orientation, to me, that hits different, right? Because everybody knows this person's supposed to come on board. And I mean everybody. The hiring manager knows, the compensation person know, the HR people know, the leader, everybody knows. And if they don't show up, to me, that's a bigger hit because that's embarrassing for me, right? And I've had that
You're
happen
standing
quite a
there
few
with a
times.
sign in the lobby that says "Welcome,
Yeah.
Betsy," and
Yeah.
Betsy doesn't show
Welcome. I
up.
got Chick-fil-A. I got coffee for you. Nobody shows up, right? It's embarrassing. So it took me a while to figure this out, but it's just so easy, in how I run my teams now, right? Because it's I tell them you never ever give a candidate an opportunity to talk to somebody else after an offer has been made, ever, right? And here's what that means. That means that if you make an offer to a candidate and the candidate accepts it, I'll start in 2 weeks, and you don't talk to that person in 2 weeks, chances are this candidate has already had conversations with other people, have got other offers, right? And other offers might trickle in. If you ghost that candidate for those 14 days and you don't talk to them, you don't get them involved in the onboarding process, they're going to entertain that offer. They just are. Now, obviously, if that offer they get like $50,000 more power to you. Do what you got to do, right? But outside of that, you take away any will for them to talk to other people. How do you do that? You put a strategy together. After you make the offer, 2 days later, follow up with them. You follow up with them with what they can expect for new employee orientation. 2 days after that, you know what? Get ready for new employee orientation by start going over our core policies. Our core values, not policies. I'm not using that word yet. You start introducing little things to them about the organization in a fun way that gets them even more excited. The more excited they are to start with your organization, the less likely they will talk to somebody else. It's really that simple. But if you just keep it dark for 14 days, and in the back of their minds, they're going to be wondering, did I make the right choice? And then somebody else comes in, sweeps them off their feet, right? It's like, being in love, right? You got to make sure you do things right. And you got to make sure you keep that communication. And what I do, Pete, I have either I call them an email every 3 days or so, right? With excitement, with pomp and circumstance, and asking the question about themselves. In the back of their mind, they're like, wow, they really care about me as an individual. I'm feeling much better about this organization, and they're building a rapport. When you build that rapport, they'll be less likely to let you down and ghost you come day one. So to me, constant communication with the person.
So you're building a rapport is well, I'll play on your this is risky, but I'll play on your being in love, comment
Uh-huh.
where if it's right and good, it shouldn't be forced. It should just
Mm,
happen.
true.
And you don't have to be reminded to call someone that you're in love with because they should be on your mind anyway. So in the world of recruiting, and this is near and dear to me because ghosting is a trend that has grown with the internet. And this here I go, boomer again. But when I started recruiting in the 90s, we didn't leverage the internet the way we do now.
Yep.
And so each resume that a recruiter had was more meaningful than a resume today. Today, you can get onto LinkedIn and you
True.
have a seemingly limitless pool of candidates. And so each candidate interaction you have has the risk of being less valuable than if you only had, let's say, 10 candidates potentially to speak with, right? Those 10 candidates are going to be more meaningful to you than an unlimited number, just as human nature. And so you have to resist that mindset as a recruit. To be a good recruiter, you have to put that aside, and you have to treat every interaction as if it is the only one you're going to have.
Mm.
And so through the conversations you have, it's not about finding out pushing the candidate forward. It's about understanding the candidate's drives and motivation, and what's really important to them, to see if that job is going to be a good fit. So if you start trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, then there's a good chance you're going to be ghosted. Now, you can do everything right, and it still can happen today. Because just like recruiters who see a limitless pool of resumes, candidates see a limitless pool of recruiters and job opportunities that are in their face, just by pulling up, one of many job sites. And so you devalue each one individually. And this is my theory that I've built over the years, where when I was away from recruiting for 10 years prior to starting Four Corner, go ghosting never happened before. I mean, it didn't happen in the mid '90s. There's a couple of reasons that I think. I mean, it happened, but it was rare.
Yeah.
The population is significantly bigger. The internet gives it anonymity that you used to not have. Um, Companies who hire from recruiters, with there was right, wrong, or indifferent. There was unwritten blacklisting that would happen if a candidate was known to be bad to one recruiter. They were just considered bad. And now there's no recourse for that stuff. The recruiter next door or down the street will take the candidate gladly and
Yeah.
not care that they displayed bad character in a different situation. So there's a lot of that that's happened as well. But I think we're essentially saying the same thing, which is get to know the person at an individual level. Get to know them for their unique desires and career objectives. And if it's a bad fit anywhere along the way, identify it as such and move on. And that needs to be on both sides. Don't keep something going just because you don't have a glaring reason not to. There's too many jobs, and if you're the candidate, there's too many jobs. If you're the recruiter, there's too many candidates to try to force a match that's not natural, just like in a relationship of a romantic nature, right? Like, you shouldn't have to force this stuff at all. And I like to say, it's like being on a road with a bunch of green lights. When you're driving, in a hurry across town, and you time every light correctly. You know how that feels? It just
Yep.
feels good. We all know what that feels like,
That's right.
right? And it's hard to articulate, but you know it, and you feel like you're winning a prize. That's how it should feel when a job is right for a candidate, or a candidate's right for a job. It's just green lights all the way. If you keep having to slam on your brakes because the red lights keep popping up and they're going to make you late for wherever you have to be, we all know what that feels like as well. Identify it as such, call it out for what it is, and then move on. And to me, I don't know if that has the meaning that it does in my mind as I say it out loud, but you have to just, maybe just a very long-winded way to say, go with your gut. And the second your gut starts telling you this is not a great scenario, voice that, act on it. Don't keep that buried, because eventually the person's not going to walk in the door and you're going to be ghosted, or the employer is going to quickly realize it's a bad fit on the other side. So bad news early is good news, never more true, and it is in recruiting.
I laughed, Pete, because you were spot on with that analogy with the green light. That happened to me last week, and I was so happy that I looked at my wife and I'm like, "Did you see that? Did you see for the past 8 minutes? Green light. We are playing the lotto tonight, hands down." Obviously, it didn't work because I'm still here, right? No, but that's way better than my love analogy, because you bring up a really good point. Don't force it. If you force it, you're gonna have an issues. Like, and look, in a relationship, when you're in love, if you force it, I don't know, that could turn into stalking. I'm not saying let's do that, right? Let's not do that. But you're right. It's got to feel right, and you got to have all those green lights. So don't force it, but make it as easy as enticing as possible. That way the person doesn't entertain another offer later on. So, but you're right. We're saying the exact same thing. I love the green light thing.
And we talked about this on one of our recent podcasts, but stay in touch with that candidate, regularly. And I would say the same thing. And this is a world where, with budgets changing rapidly, business situations changing constantly, candidate that stay in touch as well. We see stories of companies rescinding offers. It doesn't happen a lot, but it can happen. So out of sight, out of mind works both ways. I would say. I mean, definitely as the employer, or if there's a third party recruiter involved, you want to drive that. That the onus is on you to do that without question. And don't assume the candidate will. But candidates too, if you haven't heard from your employer in a couple of days, you should reach out.
Yeah,
Right? Don't sit back and wait.
that's right. That's right.
All right. So one more. I think that's all we have time for today.
Yes,
This
sir.
is timely. We're making our employees come back to the office next month, and some don't want to. Shocker. How should we handle it?
Oh, Pete, I've been asked this question so many times, and I mean so many times. And I'll give you my answer, but I'm shocked at how people are surprised with the answer, because people either want to hear, no, bring them back to where they should be okay, or no, they should always stay home. Everybody's different. My advice is, don't force people one way or the other. Give them the option. Everybody's different. Everybody has different reasons why they want to come into the office. Everybody has different reasons why they want to stay at home, especially with everything happening. This pandemic has really turned everybody's life upside down one way or another. And to say, do this or don't do that, go ahead and just give them that option. And here's why, Pete. Because if organizations are holding firm and saying, I don't care what you say, you're going to come back into the office by the end of, I don't know, 2 months from now. Now, granted, some companies, well, you know what? Before I even say that, I was going to say, Pete, that some organizations, they just can't work remotely. But if they were doing it temporarily, so they've proven they can, right? So that's something completely different. But let me give you this example. The reason business leaders need to be flexible with this is because at one point, I don't know if people know this or not, Pete, it's organizations don't have to offer benefits. They don't. There's no law that says you need to offer benefits for ex-employee outside of unions, right? But the law comes into play, and again,
And the Affordable Care Act. It's
right,
kind of a
well, I mean, well, yeah, I mean,
kind of a
got
thing.
it. I get it. I get it. ACA came into play, right? But back, God, you know what? That used to be my go-to response for something like this, but you're right. ACA really did change that, right?
Well, and across states, there's different
True. You
requirements
know what?
that we know. So
I can't believe I didn't catch that. I'm embarrassed, Pete. I should have caught that, but you're right. You're right. But here's okay.
how about we say perks?
Well, a long time ago. You know what? No, I'm going to say before ACA.
Okay.
Before ACA, organizations did not have to provide that.
Right.
As soon as one organization started doing it, they're like, ooh, that's lucrative. Another one did it. Another one did it. Pretty soon, we're going to be in an environment. Fast forward to right now, we're going to be in an environment that this is going to, working from home with the flexibility of telecommuting is going to be an expectation. And if you're going to be one of those organizations that you don't want to adhere to those expectations, then you're going to have to deal with how you're going to handle people jumping ship to other organizations that they put the flexible telecommuting aspect as a staple of the organization, right? So we might as well hop on that train right now because everybody's different. And if you give them the option, that is the best way to handle it.
Now, so this is very free market thinking, right? Of let the market determine what you do, and
right.
that is going to happen here. Unlike the Affordable Care Act, which was an interesting thing to for the staffing industry, because benefits were usually not offered not in the same way in the world of contract staffing, because the contract employee was generally paid significantly more as a trade-off. So what they didn't have in terms of medical health benefits or vacation days, if you had a direct employee who received all of those sitting next to a contract employee doing the same job, the contract employee was typically making significantly more per hour to make up for it. In that back then, I would have told you no one was complaining, right? Not this is
Of course
not
not.
this is an argument about the
Yeah.
Affordable Care Act being good or bad. It's about the Affordable Care Act being necessary in the world of contract staffing
Yeah.
specifically. And I would tell you that it was not, because the market dictated that. If what the employees would do, if you put a value on perks and benefits that would come with being a direct employee, you could choose that. But there was a big group of people who put more value on the hourly rate that they could make as a contract employee and the flexibility that goes with that, and myriad other reasons. But they specifically chose to not be a direct employee. Now that someone has to pay for the benefits, yeah, that's really changed the whole marketplace. So um, that's a little off topic, but with what we're talking about, but the the employees were going to naturally make those choices based on what was better for their own situation.
Yep.
And that's what we're seeing here now. So you, as a company, you can mandate whatever you choose. You have that right, but understand that there's a there's a there's ramifications
Yeah.
of what those choices are. So if you draw that hard line right now and dictate that all of your employees have to come back, well, they may think otherwise,
Yeah.
right? You shouldn't assume. And so it's a wild time right now. And so that someone asks the question, how should we handle it? Well, first, figure out if you can be flexible as an organization, because your competitors most certainly are doing exactly that right now. Whoever you are, there's going to be winners and losers, Ricky, as you said earlier in the podcast, from all of these things.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I don't know if I stopped you
No,
halfway through,
go. I
but
mean,
it's
that's not an easy, because there are some companies who cannot just wave a magic wand and say, great, even though we'd like for you to work at home, we can't, because it's a matter of practicality for whatever reason. Some industries are more prone to allow that than others, and other some places not going to be impossible. I think everyone knows that, right? A retail store, a restaurant, you can't have your employees virtual, right? If they're working on the floor. I think we're talking about the companies where there's an option, right? Let's use staffing companies, for example. We There's really no difference in our ability to do our job, whether we're in the office or not. It's just a matter of culture, control, real estate that has been paid for that may sit empty. If you want to make that your employee's problem, so be it. There's some interesting considerations that are going on right now that I think are going to change the face of the American workforce in many respects.
and you know what, Pete, and it's I've never said this live. You know, I said it one time before a few years ago, but about 15 years ago, I was working for a government entity, local government entity, and it's I brought up the idea of, hey, why don't we try telecommuting 1 day a week? And what the county administrator told me was like, no, you can't trust people to work from home. I need to see butts in seats. And my thing was, is so what's important to you? Productivity or butts in seats? Because you can have butts in seats who don't produce, right? But it's checking that box. Or you can have productivity. And the pushback was, it's like, well, it's I guarantee that if people are at home, they're going to gaff off and they're not going to work. That whole theory. I think this pandemic kind of proved that theory. I thought I read somewhere. I think it was 30. It's I could be wrong. I got to find that article. I think overall productivity jumped about 30%. And the reason being, the reason it jumped is because people were at home working more than when they're at the office, because they didn't want people at the office or people they're they should two things. They were at home gaffing off. So what did they do? They worked harder and more hours, which kind of goes into being burnt out, doesn't it?
It, yeah, but yeah, that's an interesting point, right? Because if your scenery never changes and you feel like you're at work always, if you have your, your computer open, if you don't have a dedicated workspace, a door you could close and not have to see it to feel like we're no longer, quote, in the office,
Yeah.
that can happen if that computer was staring at you, while you're eating dinner or while you're, trying to relax at night. That's real. And it's just a fascinating thing because I know right now with that, if I think of our internal staff, we know because we've been told that there are folks who would like to be in the office. They would like to be in the office primarily because they want to be around other people. Well, our office, while open for whoever wants to come in, is not going to be full like it was in the
Yeah.
past because of the other folks who don't want to come in at all. And so we see sort of an office that is never going to be what it was unless we made everyone come back. And I can tell you that means some employees are not going to like it as much as they otherwise would have. And
Mm.
I think there's a place for both. I know that there's some young professionals who crave being in the office because they're new in their career. They want to be around. They want to be around a group. I think there are people who feel isolated working at home and need that change of pace. If you live alone, that can be lonely. So
Yeah.
I think it's not a given that employees don't want to go back. So if you're that organization who I don't think you can make your employees come back. I think they're going to leave. I think if they're someone who doesn't want to, and there's no shortage of job opportunities for them right now in the market.
There
That
sure isn't.
so sorry to not give a better answer to your question, Buzz, but it's you should handle it by just accepting the reality of the situation. Um, but feel comforted knowing that in my, as far as I'm concerned, everything I've seen indicates that there's just as many employees who crave being in the office and want to be. So you may have to do some swapping out of your staff and retraining and the expenses and effort that goes along with that. But perhaps it's worth it to have the people who are going to be happy in your environment and not bitter and angry that you force them to do something they don't want to do. I mean, I just don't think people will do that right now anyway. I
Yeah.
think it's such an employee's market that, like you said, employers should allow. I mean, that's our stance, of course, because that's what we decided to do.
That's right.
We made it 100% optional. But I also have to acknowledge that that's not ideal. There is no ideal answer to this. And I could make a case for each possible scenario. And this is where we landed because we think it was the best situation of all the options. And we think it's a great situation, but I don't think it's ideal.
It's working
I'll
out
never
for
say
us though,
that.
Pete, because I love going into the office every now and then, and I see random people. Not, I mean, just random employees who go in, do their job, and leave, and you could tell that they appreciate that flexibility, right? Just because sometimes you don't want to be in the office every day of the week. I mean, you kind of had to a year and a half ago, right? But just to know you've got the flexibility that you can change that scenery for you and then go home for 2 weeks and then come back for a week, whatever it is, that change of scenery really helps. That flexibility is going to help your employees, folks. I'm telling you, in 5 years, mark my words, this is going to be one of those things that are going to be a staple in a total compensation program.
Oh, without question.
Yeah.
And we're never going back to how we were.
Nope.
And in the last thing I want to say on it, this is from my perspective as a staffing professional, not our business. We made the decision that was right for us once we left in March of 2020. We from that moment forward, made it optional to come back. And I would say 90% of our employees choose to stay home because that's where they'd rather work, which is fine. What I discourage anyone from doing is two things. One, changing over time, one day saying our policy is this, and then the next day saying it's that.
Mhm.
We're seeing that happen, and that is really frustrating for employees who build their life around their work schedule, whether it's childcare, pet care, you name it, transportation. There's unlimited things that an employee has to consider as far as their work situation and their home life, and to play with that is a terrible idea.
Yeah.
And so don't do that, please.
At all.
At all. But it's happening a lot right
Yep.
now. We keep seeing it because it's like trying to time the stock market, right? Like, don't do it. Just make a decision, live with it. Don't change based on the way the wind's blowing or your,
Have a strategy.
whatever, COVID news came out next. You're not doing yourself, your employees a favor, and you're doing your business a disservice. Um, the the other thing is this hybrid model that's enforced really has no benefit to your employees either, regardless of what you think. So if you're an employer who, I'm sorry that you've signed a real estate lease that you wish probably now you have not, but to tell your employees you can work at home 2 days a week and in the office, it serves no benefit to them,
Doesn't.
because now you're giving them conflicting schedules, which makes it even harder to manage your lifestyle. And you're making them less productive than they would otherwise be by switching back and forth. It's just it's a, I get what you're going for, but it doesn't work. And your employees aren't happy with it. Trust me, you're not getting, just like you're not getting the burnout thing, or I don't get the burnout over the years. That no one's coming to me with that. They're not coming to you to tell you your policy is bad and they don't like it and they're probably looking for another job. So don't do the mandatory. You're either in or out, and then live with
Yeah.
it. That's my very strong advice to anyone making those decisions, because we get the feedback and it's pretty crystal clear.
Trust me, we get the feedback because we
Yeah.
interview people left and right. People know that, and we understand why people are leaving, and we know how big of an impact this is for folks. So the name of the game is flexibility. That's what it is. So,
That's it.
all
All
right.
right. So that, man, that's a lot for three questions today,
So
I think.
almost an hour. That's
Was it an
awesome.
hour?
Yeah,
Okay.
52 minutes so far.
We're losing listeners left and right at this point. So okay.
Oh, come on.
But I think these are important things to tackle. I'd like to go back to these questions in 6 months, a year, to see if we think differently than we do right now. Maybe
That's a good
we'll
point.
on these things. Maybe we won't. I think we're pretty definitive on these, but the world's changing pretty quickly on us, and it's not done.
That's right.
It's still happening.
That's right. That's right. All right.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. As always, please give us more feedback and send questions to hirecalling at fourcornerresources.com. Visit our website, fourcornerresources.com, and you can also reach us there. And the more feedback, the better. So thanks for listening.
All right, folks. Thank you very much. Drive safe and good night.